Katie,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
For everyone watching and tuning in and checking in with us, if you don't know Katie, you need to know Katie. She is many things. We were just laughing just a second ago. The most important of all of them is you are an assistant professor at the University of Mobile. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that is correct. Yeah, I teach software development and marketing.
So she is smart enough to be hired by a university. So we felt like she's probably smart enough to educate us on all things online, digital, small groups, evangelism, whole nine yards. But welcome, Katie. You've been a
Thanks.
longtime supporter of the SALT community. You've been a speaker at SALT Conference. I'm personally stoked you're going to be back this coming fall. Lord willing, we have a in-person gathering. Our team is excited, and we're still planning and preparing for that. So but you're also part of Church Communications, churchcommunications.com,
Yeah.
Facebook group, katieallred.com, Story Brand
Yeah.
Certified Guide. What else can I put on your resume today?
Harry Potter group community. That was back in the day. No, I don't know. There's lots of random. I'm just all over the place, really. But yeah, thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we were brainstorming as a team the other day. Man, what can we do to kind of help pull the curtain back on helping everyone in our community and many who are working in a church, whether on the technical team or the creative team or the communications team. What does it look like to sort of transition into this sort of, digital small groups, digital evangelism, digital discipleship?
Hmm.
And you and I start texting, and I was like, "Oh, Katie, you've got to do this." So I'm going to set you up, and then I'm going to let you kind of run with this for a bit because you have recently done a presentation, kind of breaking down what does evangelism look like in the online world.
Sure.
And I feel like there is no better time than now to sort of start exploring this idea. And so I'm going to hand it over to you, and then maybe we'll have a conversation afterwards after you share a few things.
Sure. What's funny is that I've been giving the same talk for years. So, like since 2015, really. I've been talking about how you can create community online and how you can reach your community online in really significant ways. So, it's really exciting to actually be able to share it and people actually take it to heart because they know that this is a reality, right? So I've changed this up because of COVID, but I just want to kind of go through it real briefly. Okay, so I think that we all know the big problem here is that we're lonely. Okay, so COVID-19 has increased the loneliness and isolation that people are facing more than ever before. Even before COVID-19, in 2019, 60% of Americans reported that they felt lonely. Okay, that was an increase of 7% from the year before. So 60%. So that is what, one out of six people, right? Feel lonely? Like, are like, so how sad is that? Okay. And it has to be exponentially higher now that we're in this period of quarantine. Okay. The percentage of American adults reporting that they have no one to confide in has tripled since the mid 1980s. No one to confide in. Okay. With more than one quarter reporting that they have no one. So one out of four people report they don't have anybody to talk to. Okay. So how important are small groups right now? And how important is it that we create small groups that reach your community online? So, and it's not just one generation. It was funny. I searched. I was like, "What's the loneliest generation?" Right? Because I remember seeing like some kind of article. I was like, "Ah, it said this was the loneliest generation," and then I looked it up, and every generation is the loneliest generation. It is not just one. Yeah, it's so funny because it was like Gen Z's the loneliest, millennials are the loneliest, boomers are the loneliest, everybody's the loneliest. And so, you can say that loneliness only affects certain demographics, but that's just not the case. We are lonely across the board. And here's the thing: if we don't help people with their loneliness, COVID-19 actually poses a higher risk to people who feel lonely. If you are stressed, your immune system is worse. And so, and loneliness, it plays a big part at putting us at greater risk. So, how can we do this? We know it's difficult to find opportunities to share the gospel. It's difficult to find opportunities to share the gospel when everybody's healthy and well. It's not that this is a special opportunity. It is an increasingly special opportunity, but we can do this when it's not, so what if we
And
could
I'll
use the
say, I'll be the
internet?
first to
Go
admit,
ahead.
Katie, that it is difficult to share the gospel when you're sitting on a plane next to somebody, let alone not sitting on a
Exactly.
plane next to somebody.
Exactly, because it's awkward, and so how can we create opportunity to share the gospel with the blinders down, not fenders down. I don't know what I was about to say. The blinders, how can we like take away this awkwardness and so that we can create relationship? The ways we've always done it aren't really working anymore. So I kind of go over that. So tracks are awkward. I'm sure you've passed out some tracks in your life, right, Luke?
No, I have luckily never passed out a
How have
track,
you
but I
never done
have,
that?
but I have
Were
picked
you
up a
raised
hundred
in the
dollar.
church, Luke?
Yes, I was, but
Are
I have
you
never
sure?
picked up a $100 bill I have picked up a $100 bill thinking it was $100 bill and it was a track. So I have
That's
been
my
raised
next
with,
one.
yes,
Yes, the $20 track, which I guess you saw $100 one. That's
yeah.
even worse. Like, why are we doing that? That is so hateful. It is so extremely hateful. We are prying on people's needs. Like, we should be the answer to their needs. You should literally give people $100, and then maybe you can have the opportunity to tell them about Christ. Like, it's not, like this is not fair. It's not right. And then also the Evangel Cube. Does anybody remember the Evangel Cube? I wish I still had mine. I don't know where it is. I'm sure it's probably gone. It used to live with my stuff from elementary
I've never
school.
even heard of this. What is an
You
Evangel
never
Cube?
heard of the Evangel Cube?
No.
You'll have to Google it, find a picture of it. It basically shares the gospel presentation in a like a Rubik's Cube kind of format, but it's easier than a Rubik's Cube. So it's pretty neat, actually. It really is kind of cool. It is helpful if you're explaining the gospel to maybe a child or in a third world country, but it is not. It doesn't build relationships, right? It's not conducive to relationship building. If you're just going around with a cube in Walmart, nobody's gonna be like, "Want to hang out with that guy tomorrow?" So the question I have is, what if we could easily build relationships and do it through gaining trust without intimidation? And so the new evangelism is online. Okay, so and honestly, now it's the only way of evangelism. Honestly, and along with felt needs, of course, that churches are reaching across America with food and stuff like that. But I talked about this a minute ago. I was this age when I started my first online community. I was 9 years old when I started a community for Harry Potter fans, and we reached 15,000 people. This was all right. So I was about 9 to 16. So this was 1999, 2004. So before social media began, there was forums, okay, and people were members of forums, and we created this forum. We wanted a word from J.K. Rowling, so it was not just a little deal; it was a big deal, and it was awesome. We had a great time, but it was just a bunch of kids, okay. But through it, what I learned and took away now as an adult was I strategically shared the gospel with thousands of people on accident. Like, I did not realize I was doing it, but I was being very strategic about it. Like, I was making sure that every single human I came in contact with on the internet knew the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Hmm.
And so I was like, if I could make this happen as a 9-year-old, then surely people who are adults and that are theologians can figure out ways to reach people on the internet. Okay. All I did was create real relationships with people, and I did it as a child. Okay. And so if I could do this as a 9-year-old, you could do it too. All right. It's completely possible. And I think sometimes people think I'm crazy, but I'm like, no, really, it happened, and it still happens all the time. You go into Facebook groups and you create real relationships that you end up meeting people afterwards, right? You may have met some business partners, some friends on the internet through Twitter or through Facebook, or through Instagram. Luke and I met on the internet, right? At first,
Yep.
we didn't meet in person. We met online. And who's to say that's not a real relationship? Okay. So anyways, you can solidify it through offline. But so anyways, in response to that, I created this church communications Facebook group, right? I thought I would find, 50 people, but now we're at 25,000 people. And it shows that people need community. Okay. They need it online because they have interests, they have questions, they have the need for community that they cannot get elsewhere because they're all dealing with the same thing together. Okay, so mine originally was about Harry Potter, right? I had like this Harry Potter group, and it was just about, you know, that, but we talked a lot more than just Harry Potter, right? Church communications is about church marketing, branding, communication strategy, but we're really a community. We care about each other, we look out for each other, and so in that way, it can become like a family. So Facebook history, it typically models church history, which is kind of funny. Not like the church history, not like old church history, like a church's history. Okay, so the first 10 years of Facebook was all about just getting people on the platform, right? Can you remember when, you know, they celebrated, hey, we got 1 million members on Facebook. We've got 3 million members on Facebook. We've got 1 billion people on Facebook. How cool is that? Well, church history kind of does the same thing, right? The first 10 years of a church, if you have a church plant, is really, can we just get people in the door? You know, is it possible for us to grow and become something meaningful? But then what Mark Zuckerberg realized, and he pivoted the entire model of Facebook to be around groups because he realized that people needed to be in meaningful groups. So in 2017, he went on this wild cross-country trip, and he visited several churches. And you know why he was doing this? Facebook's research showed that people were less lonely and more optimistic if they were involved in a meaningful faith-based group. Okay? Even if it was not, you know, if it was online, good, but in a small group, right? And he was like, how are churches creating these meaningful small groups? How can I translate this into a meaningful online community? And so Facebook's doing the same thing that churches do, right? First 10 years of a church, you might be trying to get people in the door, but then eventually you're like, I need to get these people into meaningful small group community relationships. Okay, so the same kind of thing. It's kind of funny. Okay, so this is my super secret plan to convert people through Facebook groups. It's not really that secret. I tell people about it a lot. I hope that many people do it and share it, as many as possibly they can. So I'm going to jump around here. So first thing you have to do when you're creating one of these communities is finding a niche. It can be simply for your community. You can be like Voices. We have Voices of Saraland here in my hometown. Luke, do you have a community neighborhood group that you're a part of in Nashville?
Yeah, I mean, like there's like Nashville Filmmakers Group. There's a bunch of those little things. Or, I mean, you and I are even a part of some entrepreneur groups together. And I think there's whatever that little passion, that niche, that thing that you're looking for connection or advice or support or friendship in.
Yeah, there's a group for it, or you can create a group for it. What I would love to see is that there are Christians who are in charge of all these groups, and that they are secretly using it to create meaningful relationships that lead people to Christ. So the most important thing, you know, is that it's not related to your church necessarily. I think that you can use, and we'll talk about Facebook groups at the end, you know, using it for discipleship at your church. I think that's really important, creating Facebook groups for your church. But specifically about evangelism, I don't know if it's best for it to be under your church's face. It's even a thing that I feel strongly about in live streaming, like live stream it from your church's page, but all the comments and stuff, all the follow-up should be from a human profile, not from your church's profile. There should be people DMing people that have commented and liked that are greeters at your church in a normal human capacity. Because I think it's about outreach, right? It's about connecting people with people. That's really what we want to do, because we know that life change happens in the context of a relationship. It doesn't happen outside of it. So how we can actually do it, you know, you can create a private or a public group. I recommend creating a private group. Public groups can usually become a free-for-all, but naming is important. So names with a city in it will actually help the algorithm know that you're for your city.
Now, can you walk real quick, Katie, through the difference between private and public? Does private mean it can't be found, or does private mean you can't get into it without some sort of access code or?
Sure. Yeah, so a private group, okay, so there's actually two different sets of settings when you create a group. There's private and public, and then there's visible and hidden.
Ah,
Okay, so that's a differentiator there. So a private group, you can search for it and you can still find it on Facebook. Okay, so it's private, but you just can't see the content that's inside. You can't see the members that are inside, but you can still find it. And you can see how many people are in the group and you can read the group description. There are some things that you can see from the private group. You just can't see the bulk of the content.
so is it safe to
Um,
say that the only way to engage with a private group is to be a member of that group versus a
right.
public group anybody can communicate for the most part?
Pretty much a public group is almost like a page that's ran by the public. And so a public group is kind of like a free for all. There's a lot of robots and spam and memes and trash that gets put into a public group. So I really don't recommend creating a public group at this time. And then there's two other options, right? There's visible and hidden. So visible means I can still find your private group. Okay. So visible means I can still find your private group. So you can set it to private, which means I can't see the content, which is good. People like when the groups are private because that means that, you know, if they're sharing prayer requests, they're not getting shared with the whole general public. Okay. But it's still a visible group, which means, hey, people can find it. If you do a hidden group, if you do hidden and private, nobody's going to be able to find it. It's
Unless you
invite
invite
only.
them or, yeah.
Yes, yeah, it is invite only at that point, which is great if you're like creating a missionary group or something like that that needs to be a little more underground. Of course, there's still security. People can still take screenshots or whatever,
Right.
but it is a little more secure, it's a little more tight. I don't recommend using those for general, like, I would only recommend creating a private, visible group.
So I feel like the difference here is that a private group would be like having a Bible study that meets on your campus. Anybody may be welcome, but it's not just being broadcast everybody's story over
Right,
like the radio or something like that. Like
right.
there's still a little bit of a wall.
Right, right, right. And it's not like a page, right? A page is really your front facing front door of your church. That's where you share stories of life change and what God is doing in your congregation. But a group is more like a living room. Okay. It's more like this is where we can share stories, where we can do fellowship, where we can hang out, where we can do Bible study, right? So like you can do Bible study really well. Of course, we're talking about using this for an evangelism platform, but switching over to, you know, using this for small groups. There is a tool in Facebook where you can change it from general to social learning, and you can create units inside of your Facebook group. And so you can create like essentially modules and like units. Okay. So each unit has, you know, several modules. So just like you would do 10 lessons, right? You could do a Facebook Live of these 10 lessons, right? And then you could put them into a unit and you can see how many people have actually went through that unit. And those people who are doing it will see where they left off. It's really actually very handy. It's an LMS and learning management system built into Facebook groups that not a ton of people are using. It's a great way to organize content too. So you don't have to just use it as a learning tool. You can also make that unit optional and just use it as a way to organize content, right? Like in our Facebook group, I have all of our podcasts are streamed into the group, but then I organize all of them into learning units because I'm like, these are important. I think that we have a series on SEO, for example, for the church. Well, today you may not be interested in SEO, but next week you might be like, I wish I had paid attention. Now it's just lost in the feed forever. Well, now you can go back and you can look through the units and say, I can watch all 10 lessons about SEO easily inside this group. Just like you could learn all 10 lessons of Romans, or you want to go through all 30 chapters of whatever. You can do that through the learning units, which is really cool. It's a really cool tool that Facebook built into it.
I love that. And I love that it just helps you organize some of the concepts and ideas in those Facebook groups. So you can use them for evangelism, as you've kind of walked through here, private, public, hidden, and visible.
Yes.
Love those distinctions. Now, walk us through a little bit of sort of once you've got your group up and running. I know you have been running groups for a while. What are some insights, tips, suggestions, thoughts you've got?
Yeah, so just continue on, like naming is important. So if you're naming your group, if it's a small group for your church, you know, you need to put your church preschool moms or whatever it is. You know, it needs to be very clear and don't be cute. Okay, I know
Is that
you're wanting to
because of
call it moms.
searchability, or is that
Yes,
because
100%.
okay.
It's for searchability, but also for SEO value too. Like, I mean, maybe you have some people in your community who are looking for, you know, a church with preschool moms. Great. They're going to find it because they're going to search church preschool moms or preschool moms, and your church is going to be the number one pop for that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fantastic. You don't want to name it something really cute. Don't name it Flowers by the Wayside or something. I don't even know. Just don't make up some junk. Be really, really clear with your naming convention. So if you're creating this for like an evangelistic thing, you know, before I'd showed you these things, right? Kayaking with kids. Okay. That's like a Denver hiking, Clanton knitting, Birmingham millennials, Atlanta Harry Potter fans. These are very specific. Okay. Things, because it helps with it just helps with the SEO. It helps people find you better. And so there's actually a Nashville hiking with your kids group. That's where I got that kayaking with kids idea. And there's like 3,000 members in there. How cool would it be if there was actually a Christian who was actually helping people get connected to their community, but then also creating relationships that led people to Christ, right? And so this is a very old evangelism method. I am not teaching anything new here. This is like a new twist on an old thing, you know? It's like we used to create basketball leagues and that kind of stuff, right? We still do, but like people don't really join them as much, I don't think. And so this is just a new way of doing an old thing. So, yeah, going on. So you can create rules for your group. It's really nice. Facebook actually comes up with a predetermined set of rules, so you don't have to worry about this as much as you used to. They have some really great rules in there. You know, be kind and courteous, don't spam, you know, those kind of things. But you may want to create some additional ones depending on what your group is for. To be honest with you, great rules don't tell people what they shouldn't do. Great rules tell people what they should do.
That's so good.
The thing is, groups, just like children, okay, thrive in boundaries. Okay, so if you want your online community, even if it is a discipleship group for your church, if you want it to thrive, you have to tell people what they shouldn't do, but you really have to tell them what they should do, because otherwise they won't use it at all, because they're like, I don't know what I should do here. You know, like, so you really have to remind them consistently what they should do. And why I say that is create like a weekly topic idea for your group. So we do this with our Facebook group. We have, what are you working on Wednesdays, right? And we have people share pictures of what they're working on. But if you're running a hiking group, you could do like share your most recent hiking picture every week. If you're doing a preschool moms group, how fun would it be to have like share your child's most recent fail or something, you know, like, or, you know, share funny pictures of your kids from this past week, or, you know, something like that. Or, you know, every Sunday, where did you hike this weekend or something like that. You can use some tools to do this on a weekly basis, so you're not having to remember to post this weekly topic. And so I use a tool, it's called recurpost.com. There's also socialbee.com. You can kind of bend them to your will to do this. And so I recommend.
Will that allow you to schedule, or is that what you're saying? Like it'll actually let you.
It's an evergreen content tool that will allow it for a weekly basis. So you do have to bend it a little bit to your will. You have to create specific libraries for specific days and only put that one post in those libraries, which seems a little silly. It feels like you should just be able to hit like every Wednesday, you know, just like on a calendar. It's not like that. I will say you do have to bend it to your will a little bit, but they do work and they are meant to do this. So anyways, yeah, those are great tools, and creating weekly topics just help people remember to use the group. Okay. So like,
and let's talk about real quick, and you may have been going this way, but Katie, why is conversation and topics so vital? Like, why is curating conversation more important than just kind of letting it naturally do it? Or is there a difference?
It won't naturally do it. That's the problem. You cannot expect people to go online and connect with you just because you created a group. You have to curate it. You have to.
And to go another step further beyond the evangelism piece, if we're going to use this for small groups or we're going to use this for online ministry in any way,
sure.
Is there any metric or statistics that you are aware of that show the more someone engages in a group, just like social feeds and news feeds and all that sort of stuff, that more often those conversations or points are going to show up on their news feed?
Oh, 100%. I mean, the more people comment and like and share, not share because they can't share it in a group, but the more they like comment and like on it on a post, the more it's going to be seen by the entire community as a whole. And it sort of tricks the algorithm into thinking this is very popular. Actually, that's my next thing is, how do I trick the algorithm into making this a very popular group in my neighborhood? So if you're doing this for evangelism, this is one trick, but there's, if you're doing this for just discipleship, you could probably do it for this too. But, invite 10 real life friends and explain to those friends what you're doing, and then ask those 10 friends to invite 10 of their friends. And if you release a bunch of people at one time in your group, Facebook thinks that you're super popular and will feature your group to others in the same area for free.
Okay.
So this is how I built church communications. It's my secret. Now I've given it to you. Be careful with this knowledge. It is dangerous. It's the same thing, though, that applies to, like, events, okay? So, like, I used to talk about events during this time. Of course, events aren't such a hot topic right now. But so what I would do is back when I worked at a church, I would create a Facebook event. And then I would go to our church. Okay. Our choir. Our choir is like a small church. Okay. Our choir 200 members in it. So I would go to the choir and I'd say, hey, can everybody hit that they're going to Easter right now? All at the same time. It's like, this would really help the church. Can you all hit you're going to Easter? Because of course you're all going to Easter. You're in the choir. And so, immediately I get like 65-year-olds are pulling out their phone. They're like, how do I hit that? I'm like, all right, yeah, let's do it. So everybody hits their thing. I love it. And then within 24 hours, 14,000 people had liked or hit they were going to this event because immediately it got such a great organic reach and traction.
So I know what someone is thinking right now. I know someone who is watching this is thinking, okay, so Katie, does that mean I need to sort of put all my ducks in a row and kind of come up with like a launch game plan or a launch strategy if I'm going to do small groups or discipleship or something in my neighborhood, and sort of get everything together, not just start and kind of let it organically grow? You're kind of saying launch with a vengeance, launch with some momentum so that it sort of can carry itself, depending on the purpose. Obviously, a small group that you're inviting people into.
Yeah, it can be a bit of both. It's not like I definitely planned my church communications launch with a vengeance or anything. I don't think it was a slow rollout for sure. But yeah, I think that it's smart to get people on your side, and then try to work together to launch these things, especially if you're doing it for evangelism. For discipleship, it's kind of an invite thing. People are going to join because they're already part of your church. It's kind of easier to get them to join because they're like, whatever, this is another part of our church and I want to be a part of our church and whatever they're doing. So it's a little easier to get them on the discipleship train. It's a little bit harder to get them when it's evangelism. But I will say it's harder to get them to engage when it's discipleship.
Yeah.
That's the number one problem you're going to have when using Facebook groups for discipleship is how do I get these people to engage? And like I said, it is reposting content again and again and, sharing stories and engaging people with good questions. You have to ask questions consistently and constantly in a Facebook group. Otherwise, nobody's going to respond. And so you can't just it can't just be a broadcast method, right? Social media is social. It's meant to be a conversation. And so you have to create that conversation for yourself, essentially.
That's really good advice, that this isn't replacing your Facebook page. This isn't replacing your sort of email newsletters. This is another supplement to that to try and engage people.
Right. So I've been talking about this for a few years, right? I've told you that, but this person, she's in a different Facebook group. She was like, Katie, your podcast gave me the nudge to finally put myself out there and join a community interest-based Facebook group. Okay, this was before the pandemic, so don't worry. She took a picture before the pandemic. It's okay, guys. This was probably back in December. And she said, I finally put myself out there and I joined this group. I've been seeing posts about a neighborhood walking group, but I felt like putting my introverted self out there with a bunch of strangers would be overwhelming. But tonight I took the plunge. I joined their Facebook group and got in on their evening walk. So she didn't even create a group, right? She joined a group and said, hey, I'm going to try to be a part of whatever they're doing. And then it says the 9 of us plus 2 dogs had a lovely 30-minute walk around a lake and then took a selfie before one of the ladies sent us off with homemade pickles and applesauce. This might be one of the best gospel opportunities I've had in a long time. Okay? How cool is that? And then, all right, been talking about this idea for a long time. And Brandon Rogers, who's a moderator in our community, he was like, Katie, I finally put it to work. I was like, what did you do? He was like, I created this Facebook group for needs. And so this is for Northeastern Louisiana needs, NELA needs. And it's a community response to the coronavirus. He did not make it about his church. Okay. He was very clear that he wanted to make this about the community. And so this is the description, a group for sharing and organizing community resources in response to COVID-19. The goal is to organize basically on a grassroots level to ensure vulnerable community level members have access to food, housing, healthcare, and other necessities. And within 24 hours, he had 4,000 members. Okay.
Unbelievable.
What's great is that he's going to have this community after this is over. Okay. Today he has 8,000 members. All right. So like, how cool is it that the church is going to be able to help meet these needs too? But also, you know, it's not about who gets the glory, right? We just want to share the love of Christ with people. So here's a story that he actually sent me. And so Brandon was telling me about Gail, and I was like, who is Gail? And he was like, I don't know. She's a member in our group. I never met her. She's not a member of our church. But here's what he said. So Gail saw what our group was doing and jumped in pretty significantly. On her own accord, started to work with members of the group to deliver groceries because they don't have stuff like Shipt and Instacart in rural Louisiana. So because we're not able to touch money, because the church didn't want to do this, they didn't want to touch the money, she kept herself accountable by posting pictures of receipts into the group of the groceries she's buying and delivering to people trapped in their homes. So as people are posting their food needs, others in the group are sending money to Gail. So people are reaching out of their own pocket and helping meet other people's needs throughout this group, okay? Probably going to be $15,000 in groceries over the last week, all given from members in the group for the most part. Also, since she has been in Walmart grocery store so much, people were asking her what she was doing with so much food, and they started giving money to help with groceries. So here's a picture of the Walmart grocery store workers literally giving her money to help with this project. And all of this was because of this Facebook group, right?
Unbelievable.
And I guess my big question has always been, well, that's the first goal of our social media channels, wasn't to get people to our events because we can't anymore, but to actually minister to them where they already are online. Billy Graham said, I'm amazed at the wonders of technology, and I'm grateful for the ways in which we're able to use it to share the gospel around the world. And we're going to be able to keep doing that. Anyways, there's a little bit more about me, but I'm sure you have some questions, right, Luke?
Yeah. I love this. And I'd just say, if anybody listening has questions, feel free to jump in. I mean, this is a engaging conversation, engaging topic. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, just a few thoughts that I have as we sort of kind of wrap up some of this conversation is a lot of what you presented is on evangelism. And as we've kind of been talking in and out about small groups, I can't help but think about the fact that you kind of mentioned a couple of things, the whole social learning element, the learning management system. Is that something that's offered, Katie, to all groups?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
it really is.
As you're pulling that up, is it something that has any sort of limiter, or can any small group host or sort of small group leader go in and say, hey, I want to create 10 sections. We're going to go through the book of James, or we're going to go through the book of 1 Corinthians.
You have to be a moderator and admin in order to create the units. I will say that. But anybody could Facebook Live, and then the admin could put those people's different things into the units.
Okay.
So that's kind of a workaround. This is a talk I gave a little earlier, more about just basic Facebook group settings. And so you would go into your group and then hit edit group settings. From there, you'll see a bunch of options. There's group type. That's the most important one that I'm noticing here. Group type. There's a few different kind of group types. Facebook, I think, is doing away with the bottom 3 that you see there, but the first 3 are going to stay, I think, for long term. And social learning is one of them. So this allows you to create quizzes and lessons to track members' progress directly from Facebook. And so this is where you would change your group type from general into social learning. And that's when you get these superpowers, okay? You don't have them in a general group, okay? You can't get the units in a regular kind of group. You have to use a social learning group. And then by default, the landing tab will be set on units. You will probably want to set that back to discussion, but that's up to you. If you're learning it, if you're using it primarily as a learning management tool, then set it as units. That's fine. But I would set it as discussion personally, and that would leave it being more like a regular Facebook group. And so let's see. So basically what you would do is you would create a unit, okay? And then you can give a name to a unit, and you can make the unit optional, you can make it mandatory, and then all your people would see it, and it would be like reminding them that they need to complete it. And then
now, does mandatory mean they can't see second unit until they've finished the first unit, or
no,
okay.
They're not. There's no prerequisites with this, but yeah. So here's one unit, my first unit or whatever in church communications, and we have it for a podcast series, right? So you can see here's all the episodes of our podcast about giving, and anybody could log in and see it at any time.
So, I love this.
Let me show you.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to actually take you into the group for just a second.
While you're doing this, let me ask these questions, because this is very practical and incredibly helpful. Is there any limit, as far as you know, on the number of groups that a church can have? I mean, I got to imagine.
You can have as many as you want.
Okay, because I got to imagine big churches. Let's take a Brentwood Baptist where you used to be at. I mean, right. the number of small groups that they have
now there is a limit to you cannot link a group to more than one page, so that would have to be linked to all to one page.
Okay,
so I recommend
if the church had
to your Baptist primary church, right?
Yeah, then you would just link all of these underneath. In fact, that's probably even smarter, right? Because it's going to help from a communications director standpoint. They're probably not going to want to have all of the churches, small groups to be basically public and out there,
right.
With a bunch of random, church members, not random church members, but lay members of the church. They're going to want them all to be centralized and probably managed.
And see, they still do have all these groups. Okay.
I love that. Yeah.
And so, and see how the names are really clear. All right. Brentwood Baptist Church Group. Okay. Brentwood Baptist Resource Center, Brentwood Baptist Children, Church Choir, Baptist Missions, Preschool, Women. These are really specific groups. Okay. Yeah. So they're not cute or coy or anything. They're very specific. And so let's go back over here. This is my group. Okay. This is church communications. And you can see we have it set to social learning. Okay. And when we set it to social learning, we get this units tab over here on the left-hand side, units. And so I can make the units the default landing tab instead of discussion. I don't want to do that. Discussion is our primary business, but we do have these units. And so you can create a unit and you can name it whatever, and then you can add things to it. Here's what one looks like. And basically you could add any post you wanted to this unit, and you can reorder them however you want to reorder them.
I love this. And I love this, Katie, because I think as a member of the church communications group myself, I never would have known from the outside that the church communications group was a social learning group, right? I mean,
right. Yeah. It's
I think that's important.
Very normal.
I think that's the important thing. Like, as you're doing this with your church, you can unlock this powerful tool without it looking like the whole purpose of it is to be a learning management system.
And you don't have to build a whole learning management system. That's what I love about it. Here's a tool that everybody's already on that you can use. And see, these are videos, right? So now it takes you over into unit 1. You can even comment and post on it specifically. or I could upload a file to it. I could create a quiz, you know? Um, there's so many options. And then, so here's Unit 1, Episode 1. I could comment directly on Episode 1 and be like, this was awesome. And then I could go into Episode 2 and then Episode 3. And so it's a really neat tool that's embedded right into Facebook that many people really don't know about because it was launched in the last couple of years. So it's still pretty new, honestly.
Yeah, I love this. Let's talk real quick about hosts. You kind of mentioned that a little bit as you were teaching. How do you choose the right host? How do you know who is a good host? How do you know who's a bad host? Do you ever have to remove hosts? You know, I mean, obviously if it's small group and there's 12, 20 people, it may be the host is a small group leader. But let's say you do the Brentwood Baptist Church men's discipleship program and there's 100 to 300 people in there. How do you decide that? How do you select
Probably
that?
The discipleship minister is the right person for that specific kind of group. But
you mentioned Church Communications Group has numerous hosts, right? Or is it numerous moderators? I'm getting the term wrong.
Yeah, how do you build a moderator team, right? Well, it's all about finding who's engaged, okay? Who already loves your group, and they will reveal themselves when you get started, like within a month, okay? So if you start posting these questions and doing these weekly topics, and you'll find within a month who's your top members. And you can actually find out, let me show you real quick. You can actually find this out through Facebook itself will tell you. And so let's see. All right, I can go in here. I can go to moderate, or not actually group insights. And then I can find out, what's great is, okay, I can find out how many people completed my work here. Not a lot of people have completed our learning units. That's okay. But I can find out who's my top contributors, right? And I can be like, hey, Sally Andrew might be a great moderator because she loves our group. I've seen Sally Andrew a ton in the last month, and I know that she is answering really great questions. Okay, Dorian
really
Williams, cool. It looks like he starts a lot of topics on his own. He might be worth talking to see if he would like to take this as a more serious role. You know, it's all about like who is like commenting and what do the comments look like, right? Are they legitimate? Are they caring? Are they spamful? You know, and so you have to find out who are the people who are really caring, right?
I'm sitting here watching this and I'm saying, if you had a church-wide group or your church used this as discipleship somehow, this could be a way to identify key stakeholders, key volunteers, key,
for sure,
you know, members in your community that you need to sort of, you know, engage on a deeper level.
100%. Yeah, you can find out a ton about people, right? And so it's an interesting, you can even find out, you know, how many posts and stuff, like what does your engagement look like in your group, right? So, you know, 21,000 people have used our group over the last 28 days. That means 80% of people have used it. That's good. We want to keep our engagement super high.
Yeah.
And so how do we do that, right? By asking good questions. And
how many moderators, Katie, is too many? And how many moderators is not enough? You have a gut on that?
Well, I only have like less than 10 for 25,000 people. So I would stick close, you know, with who you really trust and know. And then if it becomes overwhelming for people, always give them an out. I always give people an out. I'm always like, it's okay. You don't have to feel responsible for this. This is not your baby. I just wanted you to know that it's okay for you to step back for a season. You know, you can always come back later or whatever. But honestly, all of our moderators, most of them, I would say like 80% of them have been with us since the very beginning. So 5 years, you know? And
that's
so,
killer.
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, that's the same thing that can happen for a church, right? These are church people. They all work for a church. And so they know how to use this stuff. We just have to, you know, get it organized in a way that they understand how to use it.
Last question, just for the sake of time here, because I want to respect your time and I appreciate everything you've opened up here. But let's talk about trolls. I mean, obviously, the bigger the group, the more likely you may have somebody who's there just to sort of pick at things or push buttons.
You just said we're always going to have some haters, Luke.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got a small group, let's say 15, 20 people, this may not be a problem for you.
This is probably not
Because
gonna
if
be a
it's
problem at all. It's people you already know. Like if they're being ridiculous, you call them and be like, "Stop being ridiculous."
Yeah, exactly. But if
Yeah,
you've
with a
got a
group
big
that's more
group, right?
evangels.
If
Yeah,
you're using this on the evangelism side, and let's say you've decided to make it, Nashville fly fishing, and there's like
sure.
40 billion people that want to join that because that's the
A
thing in
really hot
Nashville. I
topic in
actually have no
Nashville.
clue if that's the
I
thing
don't
in
think that
Nashville.
people fly fish in Nashville, honestly.
But like, if that's the case,
Sure.
yeah, how do you deal with that? I mean, I know I've seen people say trolls are humans too. We can't forget that. But at the same time, there's got to be a respectful way to sort of get
Yeah.
rid of them from the platform.
Handling conflict is hard. And there's a ton of resources. Facebook community actually puts out a lot of great resources. So if you haven't looked at the Facebook community resources that are out there about handling conflict, I highly recommend doing that. Actually, one of the great things that they told and that I read about recently that they just published, let me see if I can find it, was about, creating a playbook actually for your moderation team. And so let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so basically they say, your team playbook could include things like your mission, like what's your group's purpose, who's it for and why, voice and tone, like how do you communicate with members, what tone do you take as an admin team, right? Like church communications, we've always been fun, professional, but a little bit snarky. Like, and that has been I think the flavor of our group since the beginning. And we don't take ourselves too seriously. But at the same time, like we want to be respectful people. If the sarcasm doesn't come across as respectful, I'm kicking you out. Like that's just the end of the day. Okay. And then response, guys, right? Conflicts often follow predictable patterns. Okay. Conflicts will arise in your group that are predictable eventually. Okay. I have had the same conflicts over time so many times, right? One of the big ones for us is theological differences. Okay. And I just simply have a rule that says we do not argue theology or politics in this group. We are a group for how do we do communication strategy, marketing strategy well in these churches. It's not about our political or theological differences because, I mean, we have churches that are, we have Mennonites in our group, and then we have Unitarian Universalists, but we also have, obviously, and I think we probably have some Mormons, and then we have, obviously, I'm a Southern Baptist, okay? At the end of the day, what I really want is all our churches to reach people for Christ, which I know not all those denominations actually do that. But we want to serve churches really, really well, serve their congregations really well. And so we just have these very predictable scripts that, like, hey, if somebody's being hateful or just posting stuff because they're wanting to get a response, we typically don't play with them. I know that, like, yeah, these people are people. That is 100% true. And hurt people. And so with a church, your response has to be different than what mine is, right? Mine is we're a bunch of professionals, and if you're not being a professional, you can get out of here. Okay, that's basically what my response is. But you're going to have to think differently about how your church responds because people have been so burnt out by the church. Everybody has such a different response. So I think with anything, you've got to go ahead and make that game plan up front and decide, hey, when we get like a troll, do we try to call them? Like, do we try to find them? Like, not in person, obviously, because you can't find anybody in person on the internet. But like, is there a way that you can take that conversation into DMs, essentially? Anytime I can transfer a conversation from a public face to a private one, I find it fizzles really quick.
Yeah.
And so, because it's a face, right? You're taking away the church's face and you're adding your face to it. And so if you can transfer any of those differences, any of those conflicts to a private conversation, that's usually where they work out the best.
I love that. Katie, thank you for your time. For those who want to connect, I know that you had a slide up, but churchcommunications.com is probably the best starting point. Katie Allred, ALL Red, like allred.com. And they can connect obviously with the Church Communications Facebook group. and get involved in the conversation. There's a ton of great conversations in there. And I know that myself and a bunch of us from the SALT team are there. And I'm super excited. I'm just going to use this as a chance to sort of say thank you for you and Kenny from Church Communications are doing something very different at SALT this year. This whole pre-conference, we kind of threw at you guys of, hey, what if we were to try and make a big conference small? And we took masterminding groups. So the idea that I think you and Kenny are going to bring is this, hey, let's just get around for several hours and let's have tactile workshopping of each church's communications. You guys may not hit every single church one-on-one, but enough that it becomes practical and pragmatic. So SALT 2020.
We're excited about it.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So if you guys have not registered for SALT, I would encourage you to do that. SALT 2020 conference. You can go to saltcommunity.com. But Katie, thank you. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for hanging. And hope we can do this again.
Anytime.